Let's grow together. And now our message from Reverend Martin.
An old country doctor was called out to a farmhouse way out in the country where there was no electricity. He was called there to help deliver a baby. And when he arrived, there was no one at home except for the laboring mother and her 5-year-old son. The doctor needed assistance, so he recruited the young boy to help. He instructed the child to hold a lantern high so he could see while he delivered the baby. And the mother pushed, and after a while, the doctor lifted the newborn baby by its feet and spanked him on the bottom to get him to take his first breath. And the little boy said, "Hit him again. He shouldn't have crawled up in there in the first place." Well, it is Mother's Day, and depending upon your perspective, it can be a very sentimental day, or it could be a day of mixed emotions. A lot of what one sees printed in Mother's Day cards is pretty schmaltzy. I was blessed with a very good mother, but I always had trouble finding a card that wasn't overly sentimental to the point of being sickeningly sweet. On the other hand, I tried to steer clear of those so-called humorous Mother's Day cards because they seem to minimize my mother's contributions to the me that I eventually became. So what is a mother in the broadest sense of the word? Well, here are some answers about mothers that were given by grade school children. Questions and answers about mothers. Why did God make mothers? Think about it. It was the best way to get more people. How did God make mothers? He made my mom just the same like he made me. He just used bigger parts. How did God make mothers? Magic plus superpowers and a lot of stirring. Why did God give you your mother and not some other mom? God knew she likes me a lot more than other people's moms like me. What ingredients are mothers made of? God makes mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world, plus one dab of mean. What kind of little girl was your mom? I don't know because I wasn't there, but my guess would be she was pretty bossy. What's the difference between moms and dads? Moms work at work and then work at home, and dads just got to work at work. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? She has this weird thing about me keeping my room neat. I'd get rid of that. I'd make my mom smarter. Then she would know it was my sister who did it and not me. Well, it's been said that there is no way to be a perfect mother, but there are a million ways to be a good one. Anna Jarvis, the woman who began Mother's Day, selected the carnation as the flower for this day because it was her mother's favorite, and she also had this to say about it. The carnation does not drop its petals, but hugs them to its heart as it dies. And so too, mothers hug their children to their hearts, their mother love never dying. And so mothers are nurses. They tend to cuts, bruises, childhood diseases. Mothers are psychologists. They deal with fear, monsters under the bed, jealousy, sibling rivalries, temper tantrums, disappointments, the terrible twos, the teenage angst, and our grown-up dilemmas. And mothers, perhaps most importantly, are teachers. For better or worse, our mothers really are our greatest teachers. And in this era of more and more homeschooling, this is truer than ever. Psychologists tell us that we learn half of everything we'll ever know by the time we're age 7. And so much of what we learn during that period comes from our moms. course, once we grow up to be adults, we must mother ourselves. And when we do it with love, compassion, and the willingness to grow, we thrive. And when we do it with blame, judgment, and perfectionist expectations, we tend to suffer. Mothers are workers. You remember the old saying, a man's work is from sun to sun, but a mother's work is never done. And that's why the phrase working mother is redundant. Now, we humans are always looking for a time in our lives when things are going to get easier. And the same is true with mothers. But the fact is, with motherhood, things seldom get any easier. Based on my observations and conversations with friends and relatives who are mothers, I've observed a pattern. And they've told me a number of things which sort of sort down to the following. First, you think, if I can ever get through with this pregnancy, it'll be a lot easier. And then come night feedings and colic and croup. And then you think, well, when the baby can walk and gets potty trained, things will be easier. It'll be easier when they can start fending for themselves a little bit and learn to do some things on their own. Of course, at that point, they're into anything and everything, exploring the boundaries of their world and making a mess of things in the process. It'll be easier when they start school. At least someone else will have to deal with them for a few hours a day. Maybe it'll be easier when they get their driver's licenses and can haul themselves around. Maybe when they go off to college, things will be easier. What about when they're married with kids of their own? Surely then it will get easier. Well, anyone who's ever gone through these cycles knows that it never really gets any easier. It's just different. And working outside the home added to all of those motherly responsibilities, things can get pretty intense. So now, more than ever in history, I think it's true that a mother's work is never really done. Irma Bombeck said that working mothers are guinea pigs in a scientific experiment to show that sleep is not necessary to human life. And Phyllis Diller said, it would seem that something which means poverty, disorder, and violence every single day should be avoided entirely. But the desire to beget children is a natural urge. Mothers are motivators. Mother love is the fuel that enables a normal human being to do the impossible. Listen to this quote from a very famous man. My mother said to me, if you are a soldier, you will become a general. If you are a monk, you will become the Pope. Instead, I was a painter and I became Picasso. When asked what inspired them or who inspired them, many of today's most famous leaders credit their mothers. And it makes sense. A leader is someone who, by definition, guides us and directs us. And an inspiring leader makes the people around her better, giving them the confidence to reach their full potential. And nobody can recognize potential like a mother. Ariana Huffington at a recent conference named her mother as the most influential role model in her life. She said, I was brought up in a one-bedroom apartment in Athens, Greece. My mother made me feel that I could aim for the stars. And if I failed along the way, that is okay. Failure is not the opposite of success, she used to say. It's a stepping stone to success. And of course, some people need a little extra push, and their mothers may have played a role in boosting their confidence when they needed it. In the 5th grade, Benny was failing at school. One day he was elated to get a D on an exam. After all, it was better than the F's he'd been getting. But Benny's mother did not share his excitement. She said, "You can't settle for just barely passing. You're too smart to do that. You can make the top math grade in the class." So Benny's mother implemented a program of self-improvement in her home. She limited Benny and his brother to 3 television shows a week, and in their free time, they would have to read 2 books a week and write a book report at week's end. Their mother said, "My boys are going to be successful in life because they're going to be the best readers in the school." Well, Benny did become the best reader in the school, and later he became famous for being the first neurosurgeon to successfully separate twins co-joined at the head. Benny became the head of the pediatric neurosurgery division at Johns Hopkins. He ran for president, and he became a United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Benny, otherwise known as Dr. Ben Carson, used to say of his mother, almost daily, she'd say, "Benny, you can do anything you set yourself to do." Another story. She was born prematurely at 4.5 pounds. She was the 20th of 22 other brothers and sisters, and she caught infantile paralysis caused by the polio virus as a very young child. She recovered, but she had to wear a brace on her left leg and foot, which had become twisted. And by the time she was 12 years old, she had also survived scarlet fever, whooping cough, chicken pox, and the measles. Her family drove her regularly from Clarksville, Tennessee to Nashville for treatments to straighten her twisted leg. And at the age of 12, she finally got rid of that leg brace, and she achieved her dream of becoming like other children. While in high school, she was on the basketball team and became a star player, setting state records for scoring and leading her team to the state championship. And by the time she was 16, she earned a place on the U.S. Olympic track and field team and came home from the 1956 Melbourne Games with an Olympic bronze medal in the 4x100 meter relay. At the 1960 Summer Olympics in Rome, she won 3 Olympic titles: the 100 meter, the 200 meter, and the 4x100 meter relay. And she combined with teammates to win the 400 meter relay in 44.5 seconds, setting a world record. She also won the 200 meter dash in 23.2 seconds, also a new Olympic record. And after these wins, she was hailed throughout the world as the fastest woman in history. Her name was Wilma Rudolph, and looking back on her career, she explained her successes this way: "My doctor told me I would never walk again. My mother told me I would. I believed my mother." We ministers have a thing called the online forum, where we post things that are relevant to whatever's going on at that moment. And of course, this week being Mother's Day, there have been the usual contributions of poems and quotations and stories about motherhood. But there have also been comments from ministers who didn't get along with their mothers. And here's one of them. "Being a mother has been one of my greatest healers. Being able to be the kind of mother I always wanted to have. I've done tons of healing work around my own mother. She's even lived in my house for the past 3 years. She's just as self-absorbed as she ever was, but I am different, so it doesn't affect me like it did when I was a vulnerable child. Learning that God is my source was one of the single most healing concepts for me, to stop thinking of my parents as my source." So, if you were asked to describe your relationship with your mother, and if your reply was, "It's complicated," don't feel bad. Even we ministers have our issues. The good news is that we have 2 powerful tools to deal with whatever may come up. Spiritual truth and spiritual practice. Spiritual truth, which shines the light that eliminates all darkness, and spiritual practice, which allows us to consciously and deliberately live our lives at a higher level of being. To me, the most important thing to keep in mind, if your mother was anything less than the ideal, is that you have the opportunity to counterbalance that experience. You can stop that cycle dead in its tracks. You can be a mothering presence for yourself and others, and you can do it in a more positive way. Because of what you endured, you can be more mindful of the qualities that deserve to be shared with yourself and others. And so mothers are managers and cashiers and menu planners, birthday party impresarios, wardrobe mistresses, backyard referees, chauffeurs, building custodians, religious leaders, and much more. And all of these jobs are to prepare us for independence. A mother's most important job is raising her children in such a way that they can become independent of mom, that they can leave the nest. And as we leave the nest, we become responsible for ourselves. We've been given the love, the support, the education, and the encouragement we need to survive and thrive on our own. And the fact is, we are all mothers at times. It is said that masculine love is protective and feminine love is nurturing. And we all need both. And we're all capable of giving both. We all have different ratios of masculine and feminine traits. And that ratio may vary depending on whatever's going on in our lives at any given time. We've all known tough guys who can be very soft with children or animals. Some of the best mothers I've ever known were single dads doing a wonderful job raising their kids by themselves. They managed to combine their masculine strengths with their feminine strengths, and their kids turned out just fine. And there are many women who've had to be both father and mother, who not only filled the traditional feminine role, but were tough as nails when they needed to be. It's kind of like those pioneers in the Old West of whom it was said, "It's where the men were men, and so were the women." You can even find some amazing examples of mothering in the animal kingdom. Not too long ago on YouTube, there was a video making the rounds of a fully grown male pit bull dog who was mothering baby ducklings who had lost their mother. We are all mothers to our world, therefore. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "In a certain sense, we are all mothers giving birth to a new thought, new ideas, and new events." And why should we doubt that the same creative power which prepares the mother to give birth to her baby will not also prepare us to give birth to a new experience? For in a certain sense, the mind of every person is both father and mother to the events and circumstances and conditions that take place in his or her life. Whether it is the physical birth of a baby or a new invention, everything comes from one source and through one creative process. Holmes continued, "I love the idea that we are surrounded by the womb of nature, which gives birth to all ideas. But are we cradling our thoughts and ideas in the heart of love? Are we preparing for coming events with the same joyous enthusiasm with which the expectant mother prepares for the birth of her child? Let us, then, prepare our minds to give birth to a future bright with hope, constant with fulfillment." And then he included the following affirmation: "I live and move and have my being in the eternal presence of the Father, Mother, God. I know this divine parent nurtures my every prayer into fulfillment. I neither fear nor doubt that the creative principle of life shall respond to everything I sincerely believe in my heart. Throughout history, the roles of mothers have shifted and expanded to include the various needs of society. In addition to nurturing their own children, women have pushed for the building of hospitals so that the mentally ill had a place to go other than jail. They've been on the front lines of the fight for better working conditions, healthcare, education, and elder care. They have operated soup kitchens, shelters for abused women, and free healthcare clinics. Women were also largely responsible for prohibition, but we'll give them a pass on that one. I ran across a reading attributed to Anonymous, but I liked it, and I'm going to share a couple versions with you. Before I was myself, you made me me. With love and patience, discipline and tears, then, bit by bit, stepped back to set me free, allowing me to sail upon my sea. Before I was myself, you made me me, with dreams enough of what I was to be, and hopes that would be sculpted by the years, then bit by bit stepped back to set me free, relinquishing your powers gradually to let me shape myself among my peers. For love inspires learning naturally. The mind assents to what the heart reveres. And so it was through love you made me me, by slowly stepping back to set me free. Jim Brickman wrote of his mother, "Thank you for watching over me. All of the sleepless nights you lay awake, thank you for knowing when to hold me close and when to let me go. Thank you for every stepping stone and for the path that always leads me home. I thank you for the time you took to see the heart inside of me. You gave me the roots to start this life, and then you gave me wings to fly. And I learned to dream because you believed in me. There's no power like it on this earth, no treasure equal to its worth, the gift of a mother's love." So Mother's Day is an opportunity, an occasion to celebrate our earthly mothers, thanking and honoring them for the amazing job they did in bringing us into this physical world, using the very principle of the divine feminine to birth us, unconditionally loving and nurturing us for so many years, and then selflessly launching us on our own spiritual journey into the human experience. And even more importantly, Mother's Day is a reminder for each of us to consciously connect with the principle of the divine feminine within ourselves, which is where the true power of unconditional love resides, waiting to embrace and nurture us. And that same power is waiting to give birth to your plans and aspirations. So celebrate the divine feminine in your mother, as well as yourself, this Mother's Day, and notice how loved you really are. My version of the little piece that I read a few moments ago. Before I was myself, God made me me. And being good and wise, God gracefully gave me everything I need to always be joyous, loving, prosperous, whole, and free. For living leads to learning naturally. The mind says yes to what the heart believes. And so it was through love, God made me me, giving me the power to choose what I will be. As I mentioned earlier, once we are adults, we must learn to mother ourselves. And when we do it with love, compassion, and the willingness to grow, we thrive. When we do it with blame and judgment and perfectionist expectations, we tend to suffer. But it's where we find ourselves suffering that is exactly the place for us to heal ourselves. We do this by turning to the Divine Mother within us. We all have that mother all the time. So thanks, Mom. Namaste. The Divine Feminine in me salutes the Divine Feminine in you. Have a Namaste Mother's Day.